Welcome to Marvel Media Podcast, where we talk about all things media, especially Marvel. I'm Blake, and I'm here with my co-host, Alex.
And welcome to episode 2 of Marvel Talk. Today we will be discussing episode 3 of Hawkeye, which dropped on Disney Plus earlier today. So I say let's just get right into it, shall we?
So, I think right off the bat, obviously, spoilers for episode 3 of Hawkeye, so if you haven't seen it and you don't want any spoilers, just leave a like and come back to this episode. But I would say the main thing with episode 3 is we definitely ramped up right away, and I think this was easily the best episode so far of the series, and it was just
Hands down.
overall it was just really entertaining, and just I enjoyed it a lot. I don't know, we haven't really talked off camera that much about it, but what are your just kind of early thoughts of it?
Hands down, so far the best episode. From start to finish, I feel like there wasn't really a dull moment, and the slower moments felt earned. They felt like, well, just for example, the diner scene where Kate, the dog, and Hawkeye were there, and they were just having that conversation. You really start seeing them start to bond more and more. Of course, that happened after the whole chase sequence where they were just going back and forth, or at least Kate thought she was going back and forth with Hawkeye, but he wasn't hearing absolutely anything of what she was saying. But no, it was great. I liked the fight scene with Hawkeye and Echo out to start off the episode. And yeah, I mean, I honestly, if I had to rate this episode, I would probably rate this a 9 out of 10. Whereas the episode 1, I'd probably say maybe a 5 out of 10. And then episode 2, I would say probably like around a 7.5 out of 10. So yeah, they definitely got me roped in now for this episode. A lot happened. We got a lot of backstory, which we will go over shortly. But yeah, I mean, what did you think? What were your highlights of this episode?
I mean, like you said, it definitely by far the best of the series. I mean, the beginning of the episode where we start with that kind of flashback to getting Ekkos backstory, I think the main thing that stands out to me, and I'm sure you too, is the uncle. Both are already set. That's Kingpin, 100%. I mean,
Yeah,
as soon as we didn't even see anything but referred to as uncle, and then we just kind of saw basically just his forearm in a suit, and he kind of just like touched her face. And I think for me watching, as soon as I said that, I said out loud, I was like, oh, Kingpin's in it. We're already here. We don't have to wait any longer.
absolutely.
So obviously in the episode, we got a couple more hints, not to being Kingpin, but just being referred to as uncle, and then also Kazi also referred to him as uncle at the same time, which, later on in the episode, I'm sure we'll talk more into that. But I mean, that was the early standout to me in this. And then also, I mean, I really liked how in that kind of fight scene to start it off when they're in the car, how it was all basically just one long tracking shot. I thought that was
I forgot to mention that.
just the
Yeah,
camera
that
kind
was
of
good.
spinning around on the inside the whole time. I mean, it's very rare that we get fight scenes that it's not a cut scene every 2-3 seconds almost. I thought that whole tracking shot in the car chase was really cool. And then also, as you talked about in the diner, where we kind of saw Kate and Clint have a little bit more of a, not really a heart to heart, but just a little bit deeper kind of conversation. I thought it was kind of cool how the director had them, when it got really serious, it was basically just the camera facing them head on, and they were basically staring right down the camera. They weren't even trying not to. So you got kind of that switching from Clint and then Kate. And so I thought that was pretty interesting for like the very serious. It was almost like they were talking directly to us, the audience, because they were, there was no hiding it. They were looking right down the barrel of the camera. So I thought those were kind of my more interesting, just overall thoughts on the whole episode. I would say if we want to start talking about that flashback, I definitely think it was interesting to see them keep Ekko's backstory somewhat close to the comics. We have her having a Native American background, or like she's half Native American, half I believe in the comics she's also Latina, but the actress playing is as well. And then not only that, but we got the being deaf part, and it was kind of confirmed that she is deaf, not hard hearing, because when she first was signing and talking with Clint, he said, I'm hard hearing, not deaf. And so we saw right away she was born deaf. And then I don't know. I thought this was kind of interesting of Marvel to keep the same theme. The actress who is playing Echo, and sorry if I mispronounce this. I believe it's Alaqua Cox is how you pronounce it.
Probably.
But she is deaf in real life, which we saw in Eternals. We saw Makari, played by Lauren Ridloff, I believe is how you pronounce her name. She is deaf. So I thought it was really cool that we've seen two deaf characters, fully deaf. And I mean, Clint's hard hearing. But both of them, the actual actresses playing them, is, also deaf. And then in the comics, Echo does not have a prosthetic leg. That is just the actress Alaqua Cox. She has a prosthetic leg. So I thought that was cool that they just they didn't just either one make her wear pants or something and just basically try to hide that she has one, and just kind of showed like that's also a part of Echo. That's what it is, and they just moved on. So I kind of thought that was cool of Marvel to just include those and move on with it. And so I like that part of her backstory. And I think the big thing you and I have is somehow the uncle character is Kingpin. I mean, we both are fully on board.
Doubt about it. I mean, I think everybody knew as soon as they saw that, like, that shot of I think it was her father talking, and then you saw someone walk up behind him, and you just saw like half a suit and that the arm reach out to touch her face. You immediately knew it's like it has to be him. Like, who else could it really be? That wears his tux. There was rumors of Vincent D'Onofrio coming back and reprising the role. It was definitely like an immediate. Oh, that has to be him. Like, that has to be him. There's no way that they're just gonna like fake us out again. But no, that it was really cool to see the backstory of Echo, and and again they somehow managed to actually build her backstory really well by incorporating essentially Clint killed her dad, and to this point in the show she doesn't know that it was actually Hawkeye who killed her dad. It was in her mind it's just a whole different person, Ronan. And obviously, it doesn't help that that Clint told her that he saw Black Widow kill him. So there's going to be a really interesting dynamic between her and Clint moving forward. And I wonder if at some point, because I mean, for now, I guess they got that hearing aid fixed, but I wonder if they're gonna have a fight where there's literally just no sound, no sound coming at all, and you just see them like fisticuffs going at it. So yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to, especially since she has that vendetta, and she knows that Clint knows something, and that he's just not saying it. So that definitely makes for for a good plot point. Moving forward in this show. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that really stood out to me other than that?
Well, I think one thing that was interesting is you get when after the whole fight breaks out, Kazi was talking to her and he was like, "Oh, can we talk?" And he was like, "None of these guys have learned sign language, like we can have this conversation." And he brings up like, we're supposed to be saying low profile, we probably shouldn't do this. And then he also refers to the person above as uncle, which, I mean, at this point we can pretty much safely say that whoever this is, whether it is Kingpin as we expect, or maybe for some reason it's not, it's someone else, we can assume it's not a biological uncle to either of them, more likely, or more than likely it's neither of their biological uncle. It's just kind of referring to whoever this figure is was close with her father, and then also However, we get to see how Kazi's whole backstory is all connected to them. But I thought it was interesting. He also referred to what we're assuming to be Kingpin as Uncle. So I think that'll be something that'll be interesting to see if Kazi is also kind of something where him and Ekko maybe grew up together around this whole life, whether, Kazi's parents, father, whoever it is, was also around this whole, their parents was under the rule of Kingpin, so to speak. So Ekko and Kazi kind of grew up, and maybe that's why he knows sign language, because, for just if they just by happen chance he was also just a part of the tracksuit mafia and just knew sign language, what are the chances that just someone a part of this whole gang is just no sign language? They go home after robbing the bank to hop on Rosetta Stone and learn sign language. It just kind of I kind of wonder if they kind of grew up together, and that's why he learned sign language, because they both were around that lifestyle. So I think that'll definitely be something to kind of keep our eye out on. Who knows, maybe the next episode is going to go a little bit more into his backstory. But other than that, I think, to me, the big kind of takeaway from this episode that we kind of saw more in the middle was the huge impact, not only physically Clint's having from being a superhero with now losing his hearing, but it's very interesting how much they're showing his emotional and mental wear with being a superhero and being a normal person who's in his eyes a quote unquote superhero, because he doesn't really see himself as that. And I just think that's really interesting that we're actually getting that from a human perspective, because you'd kind of expect, for most of his time he fought along, literal God, and then other figures like that are, either super enhanced, or Tony's suit was, a big part of his powers, and then other than that it was more, space beings got added in and stuff like that. So I think it's been really interesting how much this is showing his mental, emotional, and physical toll. And with that diner shot where we kind of got a little bit deeper of Kate and Clint talking, you kind of heard him mention how, I'm not a role model, I'm not a superhero. And you get the whole thing with when his youngest son calls him and she's interpreting for him, and how much it wears on him not being with his family. So I'm just really, I kind of like that Marvel's getting us this more of a deeper kind of look into a superhero's life. I don't know what your kind of thoughts on getting to see a human superhero be vulnerable.
No, for sure. I mean, and up to this point, we really haven't gotten much, story development for Clint. I mean, let's be honest here. We didn't really know anything about him. When he first started in Thor, he was just kind of this, really good archer guy, and then who just happened to get roped in when Loki came to Earth and then took over his mind, and then he wanted revenge, and then he was part of the team. But other than that, that was pretty surface level. And then they kind of, I don't know what, because I never asked you about this, but what were your thoughts back, and if you even remember, back when Age of Ultron was released, what were your thoughts when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we get that, oh, actually Clint has a family, and that's not a thing in the comics. Actually, he is known as a loner. So what were your thoughts about that? Because I think at the time, me personally, I feel like it felt kind of shoehorned in, but definitely over time it kind of has evolved into something actually in terms of Endgame, you just see him lose his family just right off the bat, and you're like, oh crap, that's gotta suck. And that ever since that moment, you actually kind of start to feel for him, because he's probably the most relatable Avenger than any other one, honestly. That being because he has no powers, he's just a really skilled dude. But he has a family, and when bad stuff happens to your family, you tend to kind of empathize with said character, And yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts about that, and how has your perception of that changed over time, especially now with this show kind of flushing him out and his family out?
I mean, I think when Age of Ultron came out, I know a lot of people, thought the actual movie itself was whatever, but I really liked how I think that was definitely his defining moment that was Hawkeye was a big factor of that movie and his kind of even when they went to their safe house where you saw his family, and then also he was kind of a big part of that end fight with Ultron and everything, because we saw when Scarlet Witch, well, I guess at the time she was just Wanda. She wasn't officially the Scarlet Witch yet, but Wanda was kind of having that little bit of a almost like a little breakdown mid fight, saying like she couldn't do this, and you kind of got to see him be like, you can do this or you can stay here, but like we have to do this. And in a recent interview, they said that in that scene there where he kind of coaches up Wanda a little bit, Kevin Feige said that scene kind of gave him the confidence to greenlight a Hawkeye show. So, I mean, I definitely think that we all kind of saw in Age of Ultron it was very much a Hawkeye, not led movie, but he was definitely way more of a star in it compared to some of the other. I mean, Avengers, he had a decent-ish part when he was, mind controlled, but I think we definitely saw his lead in. I mean, like you said, it's really interesting to get his point of view, because even though Steve Rogers is, technically a human, or he was a human, but then he got this super serum, it didn't really change him. Well, it never changed him in terms of his morals, but just in terms of actual physical appearance, and as well as just kind of being able to heal a little better, like those kind of things. So he kind of, he crossed that line. He no longer was a normal person. So it's really just kind of Hawkeye and Black Widow are your only full normal people, because even like if you want to get outside of Avengers, you get Peter Quill, but he's also technically half celestial in a way. So, I mean, I definitely think they are, Black Widow and Hawkeye are the most relatable, and I think it's just really interesting to see how much they're diving into the actual mental toll that this is kind of taken on him, and how he basically just wants to be retired and try to be a family man now, but you can tell he's definitely deeply regrets his actions as Ronin, and it's very clear that has made him basically scarred. I mean, you could almost say that he wants nothing to do with this life at all anymore because of when he was Ronin. And so I think that's, it's really interesting to see, and I like where the show's going, kind of focusing on that part. But I don't know, I'm interested to see where else it goes, and it seems like Kate has kind of connected the dots a tiny bit that he was Ronin, because she was kind of like, oh, but you know who this was, and like, a lot about them. So she hasn't fully connected them, at least they haven't said that on screen. And so I don't know if you've thought about that part, but what are your kind of thoughts of when she finally learns he was Ronin? Do you think there'll be like a moment where she's, basically like tells him like, oh, you're definitely not a hero, like you killed all these people? Or what are your kind of thoughts about when we see that moment happen?
See, I just think, I mean, me personally, I think that would be kind of like, oh, that's the easy, answer, that she's going to be mad at him, that she's going to, just, regret having him as her role model. But honestly, I feel like she's actually going to respond in a different way, because the entire time she's been trying to support him and trying to show him that, he isn't who he thinks he is. He is much more than, what his perception of himself is, which is, just an assassin that's like really skilled, and that comes in, does the job, and, and doesn't bat an eye to anything. But what she's trying to show him is that he is much more than that. That he has saved people. Obviously, he has a family, so he has emotion. He has reason to save people, and to save, back in Avengers and all those planetary threats. He has a reason to fight for, because he has a family. So I think when she does find out, because obviously that's going to be a reveal later on in the show. That's kind of a given, and I think she's actually going to sympathize with him.
And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
sympathize for him,
She's
right?
gonna be like, well, everyone makes mistakes. You're trying to undo those mistakes. Clearly, since the very beginning, all he has tried to do is track down the suit and pretty much get rid of it, so no one else gets hurt for the stuff that he did. That obviously, you can see that he honestly regrets it, almost to the point where I think that he doesn't he believed that he deserved to be the one to sacrifice himself for the stone. He
Right.
yeah, no,
100%.
he like, and I think that's kind of what they're implying. I don't know if you remember the shot in episode one where they're at the musical, and he sees the actress playing Nat, and he just starts to kind of like go into this deep thought. And I think that's kind of what's implied there, is that, you know, yes, he's enjoying his time with his family, that was snapped back, um, but he doesn't feel like he actually deserved it. He probably felt that that Nat should have been the one to, to survive and, live the long life. Um, and obviously you can see that from his reaction immediately after she died in Endgame, and that still continues on throughout the show. So I mean, obviously he's he's in a in kind of a dilemma here, where he's just trying to just bury his past, and and just go back to his family. And just going back to that scene where he answers the phone and he thinks it's his wife, and then he finds out that it's not. And when Kate shows him the writing and saying that it's a young boy, and you just saw it on his face where he's like, holy shit, this is bad. And the entire time, I don't know about you, but I actually felt like really bad. I was like, damn,
No,
he's
definitely.
like just like trying to hear, but and you kind of hear Nathaniel. I think that's what his name is.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe that's the
because
name of the
they
youngest
I
one.
guess they named him after Nat. Um, and
Yeah, Nathan or Nathaniel,
mhm,
something like
and
that.
he was just, you heard him, but he was all muffled, and you just saw. And credit to Jeremy Renner, he was actually killing it in that scene. He looked like he felt like shit, and and that scene just played out perfectly. Honestly, it couldn't have been done any better. You can tell that he regrets everything that he has done up until that point, and all he wants to do is just be done with it. He just wants to go home, and and I think it's honestly going to get to the point where he is going to feel like he just has to let this off his chest. There's going to be no other way around it. He's going to have to pretty much let people know that, he was Ronin and he did those things.
So I think it was interesting that during that conversation, when Kate showed him the card that said something about like, oh, he said it's okay if you're not here for Christmas. I think that part we really saw Jeremy Renner sell, like he was fully like disappointed in himself that his kid is so like basically at such a young age is already used to like, you're not coming, it's okay, Dad. Like it wasn't, it, you could tell that the kid was basically like, this isn't the first time he's not going to be here for the Christmas. Like, oh, it's okay, Dad, in like a very fake sort of way, just kind of. So I thought that part definitely hit pretty hard. That you could see the disappointment. And Jeremy Renner, like you said, did a fantastic job in that part. You could tell that part like actually hit him. Like, I'm gonna let my kid down again. And then I thought it was also interesting at the very end of the conversation when he was kind of hanging it up. He said like, it was really good to hear your voice, buddy, or he said
Hmm.
something like that. And I just thought that was kind of interesting for him to end the call that way, considering we know he didn't hear his voice, and I feel like even if he left that part out, the kid, it's not like him saying that to the kid really meant anything. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting way to end the call for him to say, hear your voice, compared to like talk to you or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the only reason why he said it was because I think it wasn't more towards like directing it towards his son. It was more towards like for him as like listen, I did not really hear you, but I actually heard you at the same time. What I'm trying to say is with him saying that he's pretty much reaffirming that even though he can't physically hear him, there's other ways of hearing people. And
right, he's understanding that what his kid's saying, and he doesn't want to keep letting them down, and eventually I'm sure we're going to see him basically either he does have to fully accept that he's Ronin and accept his consequences, and maybe we potentially we could see him die in this series. I mean, it would be very, very shocking, but potentially that's kind of, we see him just fully accept his fate, that what he did was too far and he can't get out of it, and he basically has to say, for the sake of everyone else, so that stuff doesn't keep happening, yes, I was Ronin, and maybe he gets taken out. I mean, I would doubt that, just the way Marvel is, but
I mean, you never know. They could throw a curveball, and if there was ever a time to do it, I feel like now would be the time. Obviously, with Kate being there, pretty much, it'd be a nice send off for him, and kind of like giving the reins to Kate, and at the same time with him pretty much giving himself up as Ronin and facing the consequences, whether that be jail or actually just in a fight where someone knows that he was Ronin, or someone finds out that he was Ronin and kills him, that he knows that at least his family is safe, knowing that Ronin himself is out of the picture. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. This series could go in multiple different directions. I don't know where they're gonna go with it, but honestly, I have faith in Marvel. They, for the most part, they have not missed. So yeah, I mean, it's just definitely interesting. We're already halfway through the season. I believe it's a 6-episode season, as was Loki and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's definitely gonna ramp up here. You kind of already felt it in like right away in the 3rd episode, nonstop, and I think it's only gonna get crazier from here.
I think, yeah, I mean, especially the way this episode ended, kind of a cliffhanger for next week, will be interesting to see us assumingly pick up right from there, perhaps. I mean, I doubt they would do back-to-back weeks of it, but maybe perhaps we start off and see, Kazi's background or Jack's background, or someone quickly, get a little short their background, and then pick up right where we were, kind of how this episode was. But I guess we'll see from that. But I would say another thought that I had while the actual fight scene car chase was happening, and he was picking out all the different arrows, and they all had like different kind of things that they did, I was wondering who made these, because when he did that little, she referred to as like a Play-Doh dart that kind of spread all that, I was like, I highly doubt Hawkeye created that. And then we saw some other ones of the one that kind of shot out and then shot a bunch of things and pulled in all the Christmas trees to stop Kazi in his truck. And then obviously we saw what I thought was probably one of the coolest scenes of the show so far, was the Pym Tech arrow. So cool. That Kate shot, the arrow, and then he hit that arrow with the Pym Tech to grow it. I mean, that part was cool, but do you think Pym Tech wasn't on the other ones, at least from what we could see, and it was just that one? Are you kind of, where are you thinking all these other arrows came from? And because I just thought it was interesting that I highly doubt Hawkeye invented, some of those were, and like we had an acid dart at one point, or arrow, I guess, sorry. What are your kind of thoughts on where these arrows with all these special things are coming from?
That's a good question, and I think probably the most easy answer would be Hank Pym. I mean, uh, with him with Scott being somewhat close to Clint. You know, they were both fighting on the same side in Civil War, and he was the one that actually picked them up. I would think that probably, you know, Hank Pym is now like the Tony Stark of the team, sort of, but without being like the main man, he's like the technology guy. So if I had to put a guess into it, I would say probably Hank. I mean, there's literally an arrow with the name Pym Tech on it. So it's
Right. Yeah, that
yeah, it
one
was
was
very
very
obvious. So
obviously a Hank Pym
exactly.
invention.
So if I had to guess, it would probably be Hank, and then he's just, you know, maybe Hank was just playing around with different ideas, and you know, obviously he has the trademark, you know, growing and shrinking tech. So I guess he was just having fun with it. I mean, I honestly don't know where like you said, like the Play-Doh one came from. I feel like if there was an arrow that Hawkeye would build himself, it'd probably be that one where it shot out like multiple different like hooks and they just hooked everything together. I feel like that would probably be the only one, other than obviously then, you know, explosion arrows or whatever. But yeah, I honestly could not begin to tell you where he would have gotten like the Play-Doh one or the acid one. I honestly do not know. What a
Right. It's kind of interesting if I don't know. Like it obviously the one literally said Pym Tech, so we knew that one that grew the normal arrow bigger obviously came from Pym Tech, whether it was Hank himself or somehow Scott, you know, stole that, but I don't know why Hank would create an arrow tip one that did that. So you would assume they kind of, who knows, maybe after Tony's funeral there was a little exchange there that he kind of talked to Pym and got some stuff. But I just thought that was interesting. One, as soon as he was shooting like these different arrows, I just kind of thought, I was like, Hawkeye doesn't really strike me as the, you know, engineer who's sitting here building an acid arrow or a Play-Doh arrow or this kind of arrow. So
right.
I mean, we saw in Avengers his kind of switching what kind of arrow tip he needed at the time when he was shooting. Like he'd switch to an explosion one. So I guess already he had some. So maybe those ones were just kind of ones that already had been built. But like we said, that Pym Tech one very clearly came from either Hank Pym himself or Scott swiped it for him or something like that. So I think that'll just be interesting. And then it came up again later, kind of in that diner shot, I believe it was when they were talking. Hawkeye or Clint referred to old Avenger kind of tech and stuff floating around. He said something about, I don't remember exactly how he said it, but it was in that diner shot. He brought up Avenger compound items floating around.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think it's going to be a big thing.
What you said was that he can't imagine, you know, like the thought of there being, you know, stuff from the Avengers compound just out in the world and out and about with, you know, especially with some of that stuff being, you know, pretty technical stuff, and he was getting pretty concerned about it. But yeah.
But did you think he was getting concerned in the sense of like he didn't want, like, you know, say, I don't know, some kind of Tony tech that could be used for, you know, whatever, an arc reactor used for something, or like a Iron Man suit somebody could put on? Or was it almost more like a, not really sentimental, but almost like an emotional type things getting out? Because like the Ronin suit getting out, that wasn't a danger, you know, in terms of like someone could use the Ronin suit to, you know, it's not like an Iron Man suit. It's not like someone could hop in it and cause terror, but it just had a deeper meaning, the suit did itself. Do you think he kind of was saying he can't imagine what's out there in terms of like actual tech that's out there that people could use for harm, or more like a sentimental emotional type thing?
I think it's actually probably a bit of both. He probably, you know, because he's one of the original six, and you know he probably saw the Avengers as probably his closest friends that he's ever had. So obviously, if you know there is some sort of tech or suit or some sort of you know,
Almost like
like
memorabilia in a way.
memorabilia of the Avengers just out there, he probably feels like, you know, just a little bad about it, being that, he's one of the ones, I think he's the only one on Earth currently alive besides Bruce. But Bruce is kind of doing his own thing. So
well, I guess we don't really know officially what Steve Rogers is at this point.
that's true. But of the original 6, I don't know if he's feeling kind of guilt for not going back and just kind of tidying things up and doing all that, and then as well as he also probably there like I said, there's some stuff that they probably had in that compound that that they would use on their missions that could be pretty deadly stuff. And I don't know if this was confirmed or not, but one of the Disney Plus shows I think is called Armor Wars, and I think that is going to star Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle, and I think like the basic synopsis of that one, I think is, and this is just purely off the top of my head, I think what it had said was that the show's going to go and explore a world, obviously after Tony, and then Rhodey having to kind of gather all these like the tech that gets out, and now someone has it, and now he is the one that has to kind of
he's tasked with kind of
exactly he is
any of the tech that got out from the Avengers compound that could either be, whether it's some kind of Tony tech like we were talking about, arc reactors, or potentially this watch. Maybe it has some kind of I don't know, some kind of repulsor type thing in it or something like that. Who knows exactly? But yeah, that is, I believe it is confirmed that Armor Wars is a thing that is going to happen. So that's a good point, that it's going to be, that is something coming up that will kind of bring back this whole thing of the aftermath of people getting their hands on more tech that either Tony created, or I mean, I doubt that there's any type of vibranium type stuff up there. I mean, Cap Shield was pretty much all that they had. Wakanda has everything else pretty much under wraps. So yeah, I would definitely say we'll probably be revisiting this topic, not only later in Hawkeye itself, of hopefully getting some answers about why this watch was so specific that they wanted it, but also in Armor Wars we'll kind of dive deeper into the aftermath of no more Tony, but his tech is still possibly in the wrong hands. And then, I mean, that diner whole scene just honestly had like a lot in it to unpack from things brought up and the conversation they had. Another one was Kate brought up her father, and she said her father was fearless and he helped a lot of people. And I was kind of, when she said that, I was kind of wondering what was she meaning, like he helped people as in like financially, like maybe he, as we know, he comes from money. He was the one, not her mom, who came from money. And then it was mentioned when Kate and Clint got to the penthouse, Clint kind of brought up like, oh, this is like your parents' place, and Kate said like, yeah, my like great, she said like great like 3 or 4 times grandpa bought the place. So it's very clear that Kate comes from very old money. It's not like her dad was the one who became a billionaire or something. It's very clear that they're very old money. So I was wondering, when Kate said her dad was fearless and he helped people, were you kind of getting the hint that she meant like financially, like he was a very charitable man? Or could we somehow see maybe he wasn't exactly like a superhero? Just to say fearless and he helped people almost makes me think maybe some kind of vigilante type role. I don't know. Did you have any thoughts when you
honestly,
heard that?
I couldn't begin to think. Obviously, the easy answer would probably be like financially, and maybe that kind of ties 2 and 2 together when it comes to the conversation that him and Eleanor had at the beginning of episode 1, where they were having some sort of money issues. But I mean, I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting if it turns out that her dad was more than just what he had seemed, that he actually did other things, maybe obviously
He was a Batman.
He was actually Batman of the Marvel universe.
I have so much money. I'm Batman.
No, you're not Batman.
Now this is a bit of a, this kind of is just, this is not well thought out yet. This is out there. But potentially, could we see somehow Jack and the father have some kind of a past? As it's very clear, Jack is hiding something, as Kate kind of showed, that he definitely has way more skills with a sword. And then when Kate went for his head, and then he blocked it, and he said, oh, it's not the first time someone came for my head, or he said someone tried to kill me, something like that. Could we potentially see her saying her father was fearless? Maybe she doesn't know this, obviously, because she was too young. But could maybe, when they were younger, Jack and her dad, I don't know, this is, like I said, this is a new theory here, but could we maybe see somehow it's visited that Jack and the dad had some kind of conflict when they were, younger, and that's where you get the whole, they know powerful people because they were somewhat related or not related in that way, but they were, connected in that way. I don't know. It's just kind of something that potentially could maybe be visited. Maybe it's, not at all.
Honestly, I would not say no to that. Anything is possible. Definitely, it would add a twist to that if it turns out that Jack was, I don't want to say friend, but at least an acquaintance to her dad, that a guy that he knew, and maybe they had like butted heads a few times, and maybe that's kind of what they're alluding to, that maybe her dad was trying to do something good, whereas Jack was obviously opposing him, and that kind of ended kind of badly. And then all of a sudden, this came up where her father was no longer in the picture, and now Jack just swoops in and proceeds with his still unknown and mysterious plan. So yeah,
right. While we're on the topic of Jack, we can just talk about the end of the actual episode, where we get Clint kind of is like, "Are you sure no one's here?" And Kate's like, "Yeah, no one's here," but we could kind of hear in the background there definitely sounded like there was someone. And then Clint kind of walks over there, and then we see Jack with the Ronin sword he had out, kind of raise it up to, hiding behind the doorway, kind of raise it up to Clint's throat and said like, "Oh, don't move," or something like that. And then that's, how the episode ends. I think, I thought it was a great way to end the episode, because as soon as it ended, I was like, now I have to wait a week to see what happens here. But I wonder, what are your thoughts of why Jack was there? Because Kate was sure no one was there. Do you think, it's going to be kind of like a thing where, oh, he's going to realize who it is and like put the sword down and be like, oh, I thought, and just kind of play it off as if like, oh, I didn't know it was you. Like, I thought someone broke into the house. Or what are your kind of thoughts of how exactly they're going to kick off next episode from where we are?
So I think that Jack already knows that Kate was the one in the Ronin suit. Immediately when she got in the suit and she just said hi, and he just like looked confused, I'm pretty sure he knew that it was Kate. And you can kind of tell throughout like the episode 2, I think, when they were talking in that at the security company, you can tell that he knew something too. And I think that's what he was just trying to confirm in this episode. And I think how he was actually there is probably, if I had to guess, would be he actually used the technology that Bishop, I think it's Bishop Industries, I think is what the company name is. He probably used that technology to track Kate, because she still has her phone on her, and he probably saw that she was heading towards I think it was her mom's penthouse. So he probably was just trying to find out what is she up to, and if she can catch her in the act. And instead, it turns out that Hawkeye was the one that he caught. and I honestly, I think he's gonna play it off as like, oh, this is not what I expected at all. Well, you never know. It could turn into a huge fight where we really see Jack's true colors and see that he's more than what he says he is. And I think Clint is going to bring that out of him. And I think at one point, I think he's just going to either run away or I don't know what else could go down, because I honestly couldn't even begin to think of a different thing. Because I mean, honestly, however skilled Jack is, I don't think he's gonna take down Hawkeye, let alone Hawkeye and Kate. So, but I could be wrong. I mean, his character's name in the comics is Swordsman, and he has a sword in his hand. So anything could happen. He could just like absolutely body both of them. But I don't know. What do you think? Is he gonna like just take them on to 2 versus 1, or is he just gonna play it off as like, oh, this is a huge mistake?
I think it is going to be more of a, he's not going to show his true colors yet. I do think it's going to be, we're going to pick up and Hawkeye is kind of going to be like, Hawkeye's going to notice it's the sword because it's the Ronin sword, which is going to be a big part of it. Is Hawkeye wants that sword. Not only if for some reason we do see a fight here, it's not only going to be, it's going to be Hawkeye trying to get the sword back. Is going to be his main goal, not exactly, beat Jack up or anything. It's just get the sword, get out of there. But yeah, I don't get the feeling we're going to get that fight. I think it's going to be very much of like a, what are you doing here? Kind of like back him up where then Kate can see him and see what's going on. And potentially we kind of get almost like a build up to the hint that something might, pop off of a big fight. And then Kate's mom just kind of shows up, and then Jack just kind of like retracts the sword and just acts like, oh, nothing's going on. Like, I don't know, Kate's here with Hawkeye's in the house or something like that, I think we could get basically a bailout of the mom shows up and Jack just basically just hides and goes back to, I have no idea what's going on right now. Like, I don't have a sword to this guy's throat. Like, I don't know what's happening. So, I don't know. I think I'm not expecting it to start off with another big action scene. I expect it to be talking and either, like I said, either her mom comes home and kind of bails out the fight because Jack just backs off, or just something of that. I'm not expecting a big Jack fight to start off the next episode, but like you said, who knows? Probably the final point of this episode probably that I want to get to is the actual sword itself is retractable, which again, I wouldn't expect Clint made that. He doesn't, I mean, I know in the comics he kind of has like a background-ish of like creating the arrows and being more of a lone wolf, but I just thought the sword, going in and out like that, kind of retracting, I thought that was interesting. Of, could it possibly be made by someone else? Could it possibly not be made of some kind? Could it be like a vibranium? What if it could be made of something else? I just thought the sword itself just is very interesting, and now we're definitely getting into the whole swords thing in Marvel. Between Eternals, we got a mention of Excalibur and Ebony Blade, both got brought up in that. We're getting, Jack has an obsession with swords. He's rumored to be the swordsman. He really wanted Ronin's sword that retracts. In the future, we're looking at in Thor having Gore the God Butcher, who he also carries around. I believe he also uses the Ebony Blade as his weapon that he had. And so I just think it's very interesting. We're getting very swords-based type thing. So do you have any thoughts on what's going on with this Ronin sword being different?
I couldn't even begin to guess. If I don't know. I mean, in the comics, I think the reason Hawkeye takes up the mantle of Ronin, because I guess it's known to be like it's basically a samurai without a master. and that is very Japanese influenced. And as we saw in Endgame, he was taking down the Yakuza. And I don't know, maybe he was kind of training there, and maybe he found some sort of mentor ish kind of character, and that's kind of where he got the suit too, because there is no mention of where he got the suit from. Remember, as Thanos snapped, pretty much everyone, like half the population's gone. The Avengers were disbanded. The only ones that really stuck together were Nat and Cap, and then everyone else was just grieving and doing their own thing. Tony was living his own life, so we know that Clint wasn't getting any sort of like supplies or anything of that nature from the Avengers or from Tony. So where did he get the suit, and where did he get the sword? That's the question. And I think
you did bring up an interesting point there about what is the background of the suit and sword in that terms, because we also got, when Kate's apartment was set on fire, he was like, leave the suit, we'll come back for it, kind of hinting he wasn't worried of, if it was a normal material, you would kind of think it could possibly be burnt up. But he was like, oh, leave the suit, we'll come back for this after. Not really to me, I didn't take it as in like, oh, the fire department will take this off, like we'll be fine. I took it more as he wasn't worried about the actual suit burning. So I think that is interesting that we don't know the backstory, and if it could have it's not just some kind of normal material in the suit or the sword.
Yeah, no, obviously not. The suit has, it looks like it's taken quite a beating, and it still doesn't look like fire did anything to it. So yeah, I don't know. He has gone around, or I guess he went around for 5 years in that suit, and that suit almost looks like pretty much unscathed. I assume that at some points he was getting shot at. He has jumped out of windows, broken glass. The suit still looks intact. Obviously, in the apartment, the whole apartment was literally on fire, and the suit never caught on fire, which is weird. And obviously the sword too. It's a very unique sword. I don't know if I don't believe it's going to be vibranium based. So I don't know. I think that's going to be a part of a episode. I don't think it's going to be this next one. I think it's going to be the episode where probably where Kate finds out that he was Ronin, and then he then goes into kind of bridging the gap between the events of right after the snap happened and he lost his family, to where we find him killing the leader of the Yakuza, and that's probably where he kind of, because he definitely changed his fighting style too. Pretty much up until Endgame, he was almost purely arrow based, and he almost never went hand-to-hand combat, and then all of a sudden he's just using a sword. So I think there definitely is a bigger backstory to the overall character of Ronin, and yeah, I think that's going to be probably a big reveal when Kate finds out.
Yeah, I definitely agree that at some point in the series, I would assume we kind of get a flashback type, something that kind of ties up those loose ends of what happened to him becoming Ronin, and where did this, outfit along with this sword come from. So I think that'll be interesting. Other than that, I think that pretty much wraps up episode 2 here of Marvel Talk. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for next week's episode, where we'll be covering episode 4 of Hawkeye. And drop a comment down below letting us know if we missed anything, or if any of our thoughts you agreed with, and just kind of where you think Hawkeye is going here in the future. And we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.